Shalom. I'm here with Ariel, who's been on my channel before, and we were just, I guess you were broadcasting on your own channel? I've never.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have many subscribers, but was just figuring to do like some sort of Halloween stream theme. Halloween themed stream, and basically talking about the role of apotropaic imagery and, in like warding off evil spirits, and basically trying to find connections to that in the Hebrew Bible. Where we hadn't even really gotten to this yet. We were talking about cocaine and tobacco mummies, which kind of addresses whether or not there was contact between the new and old worlds prior to Columbus, or even prior to the Vikings. But the thing that about the apotropaic imagery is actually in the offering of that other goat to Azazel, in addition to offering the goat to Hashem. You have this role of essentially it's kind of like throwing a treat off to a hungry tiger so that they ignore you while you walk past them. And so, like, obviously it's a different thing completely, but there are some parallels just insofar as, like, the reason why people, give out candy on Halloween is to protect themselves from, from restless spirits, in this case, children, from egging their houses. And so it's like you have this common core of giving of an offering or a gift as protection from an evil or malevolent or even just restless spirit.
So I have to throw this in. What Halloween is called in Yiddish?
No, I don't.
Chag HaBeitzim.
What does that mean?
Holiday of eggs.
Holiday of eggs, because so many Hasidic Jews get egged on Halloween in like New York. There's always like everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be Chag HaBeitzim, and like, don't go outside because you're gonna get egged. Krish, who is somebody who comes on here and asks a bunch of questions about being a Noachide, asks, are Noachides allowed to drink alcohol? Mostly yes. The only caveat to that is Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. So doing things which are harmful are not permitted. I was going to ask you, Karthik, who are you? How? I have never met you before. Introduce yourself to me and people on my channel.
Hi, I'm Karthik. I'm a first year at ASU. I saw your channel. I think it was 2 days ago. Like I got a link from him. So,
okay.
I actually met you guys by complete random chance. We were out. There's this one guy out near Sun Devil Hall who was like he's wearing a shirt that said "Women Are Property," and like stuff like that. And like we were all yelling at him. At one point, I stood up and started quoting Revelation and Ecclesiastes at him to show how stupid he is. Then he called me a reader, and then said I was an atheist and I'm going to hell. Which, like, he had a very shifting idea of the word of hell. At first, he was like, "You're going to burn in fire and brimstone hell." Then I pointed out that like the lake of fire is after the judgment. And then it's like, bro, you're taking me too literally. And then one guy in a purple outfit started like dancing at him.
Yeah,
I've been to ASU once, many years ago. I live in Los Angeles, so I'm not that far away. And yeah, that sounds like college hijinks to me.
Yeah, and it's I get 80%. He's definitely like just LARPing. It's funny as hell. And like, but like, yeah, like the campus atmosphere is generally really left wing, which is why I was so surprised, shocking, I guess. Like earlier, I got yelled at by a bunch of people. Like I said, like I was having a debate with some like there's like the local like Free Palestine organization. Like yeah. It's probably not.
Well, I mean, look, I was actually very strongly involved in the anti-Zionist movement, and I had to stop that because of all the anti-Semitism. Because I believe Zionism is heretical to my religion, and therefore I have strongly anti-Zionist views. But that's because I believe it's heretical to my religion, not because I hate Jews. And I am not aware that any of the animals were ever burnt alive. Although I could almost believe the Para Aduma may have been, but that would have been the only one. Otherwise, I am pretty sure all of them were slaughtered first.
So,
Uh,
so if you could just pull that back up for a second. So, like, if you look in, I don't have a direct citation for that. I could look it up, but basically, that the choice meats and the fat was offered up to God, and so with this, the choice meats also happen to be the thing. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing like the stuff like the was it like the what's the name the part with the sciatic nerve that Jews who keep
Git
kosher don't eat.
Hanashe, yeah.
Yeah, so like for instance, I'm guessing probably parts like that and like those that humans weren't supposed to eat or were maybe also not as good for humans were what was given a part of the burnt offering of God in addition to the fat because the fat was like the choice fat and it also like it's also interesting because the word for fat isn't it also connected to the word for milk like chalav? Chalav?
Kalev and Chalav, yeah. So, I mean, there is a lot of symbolism there. I would refer you to my video I did today, which was "Why is Protestant Theology So Bad?" Paul Vanderklay Part 3, where I talk about the sacrificial system and why Christians get it all wrong completely. But mostly, I mean, I think I think it's the Protestants who get it so vilely wrong because they were so removed from an actual sacrificial system. Because what a lot of us, especially coming from a Protestant Christian view, understand sacrifices to be is a lot like, well, first of all, people start thinking about Jesus and they think, oh, the sacrifice is Jesus, so they have a very different view than somebody who actually lived in a time where there were temples and sacrifices, who understood that when you made a sacrifice, you actually eat the sacrifice after the sacrificial process. Like, I actually went to the Hindu temple here in Malibu. It's the largest in the Western Hemisphere. And guess what? People bring things to be offered to the idols and then they eat them, right? And this is completely different from the understanding that was available to people like Martin Luther during about 500 years ago when he lived, which is why he so completely misunderstands um, the whole concept of sacrifice entirely.
Yeah, and
So
like, isn't there sorry, isn't there wasn't there one kind of sacrifice that was burned completely though? I think like in Greek, isn't it Holocaust
that's
like
where the
fully
term
burnt?
comes from, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there was the Ola, which was a communal offering, which was given twice a day, and that was in fact completely consumed. But part of that is the fact that it was a communal thing, right? When you brought your sacrifices, you would bring, including your sin offerings, you would bring it, and you would actually it was a celebration of your atonement with God. It's so again, I just made a video about this today because I got so fed up with Protestanting. Um, so yeah,
And like in that case, would the Eucharist can be viewed almost in that sense as like after the sacrifice. So when Jesus went up on the cross, that was the sacrifice to God, and God pretty much took his part, and then God took Jesus' soul up to heaven, and then afterward, his blood and body became the Eucharist, which is consumed by humanity.
So this is, I think, a way that Catholics and Eastern Orthodox understood it. And again, Martin Luther not understanding anything. I'm not a huge fan, if you can't tell. Completely rejected this idea of sacrificial communion because he didn't get it. And I think actually it was Calvin more so than Luther, who denied the idea of communion as a sacrament. So this gets into Christian theology, and frankly, I'm not dumb enough to know Christian theology that well. That was
Also,
a mistake. I was joking.
I think it's also worth mentioning that there's almost some parallels to today where there's people who they have an issue with the idea of sacrifice. And I mean, like, I think that on some level, as Western, dang it, this one fly won't leave me alone. So, like, as you know, as Western people, as people living in the West, I think that, and like, you know, I'm saying this like as a Jew too. Like, I think it's almost comparable to the same type of discomfort. Well, no, it's different because in one case you're talking about an animal, in one case you're talking about a human. So different scales, but I think it's the same type of discomfort. The discomfort that people have around the idea of you know, circumcision, and the idea that people have around, you know, sacrificing an animal. It's like there's something taboo about it to the West, and it's like it's hard to explain. But I think really what it comes down to is it's this disconnection from the cultures in which, you know, they originate. So, like, for instance, you know, in Western culture, how many people slaughter their own meat? Barely anyone. And so, you know, there's actually a really good video on this that I think it's actually, oh, it is 100% relevant to this. If you wouldn't mind playing that, it's just a little bit. We don't even have to watch the whole thing.
If you want to put it in the private chat,
Okay.
put a link to it in the private chat, and I'll.
And like I think in the same sense as like the I think part of it also the discomfort of sacrifice I think has to do with Enlightenment era thinking, rationalism, right? Sacrifice inherently is an inherently irrational process. I'm not saying irrational because that means it's against logic. It's not logical. There's no logical reason why people would say we need to give this goat to the temple. It's inherently an act of faith. When making a sacrifice, you're not using logic to justify. You're saying, I am going to sacrifice this thing that is dear to me. I'm going to give it away to please God. I'm not going to justify with a rationalist view. I'm just going to give this goat because that's what God wants. And I think part of it is like the Enlightenment sort of sanitation of everything, as everything has to be logic, has sort of taken away from the sort of faith that's required to make sacrifices, to sacrifice things for the sake of God instead of just like paying lip service to God.
Let me just answer this very quickly. I would say if you look at the work of Temple Grandin, she is a Christian and not a religious Christian at all. She's actually autistic. She's a professor of agricultural studies, and she revolutionized Jewish ritual slaughter. You will see she has very interesting things to say about kosher slaughter versus halal slaughter, and I think she makes a great witness as to which is more ethical. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Let's listen to this quickly. Can you guys hear this?
No.
This is working correctly. No. Shoot. Now do you hear it? It's very low.
Şimdi Hazır ist in Istanbul gefahren. Hat gewollt sich verlängern die Jahren. Hat gewollt das Leben machen besser. Und nie mal reingelegt das заграничное Messer. Hat gewollt das Leben machen besser. Hat mir nie mal reingelegt das заграничное Messer.
He's not gonna copyright strike me, is he?
Oh, actually, I didn't think about that.
Okay. Well, we only played a small bit of it, and we are commenting on it. So if he does, I will have to copyright strike him right back.
Yeah, fair use.
It's possible, actually, that he
transformative
would.
work.
It's possible
So
because
his-
actually, sorry, Ariel, I checked in on your video, and I think that some of the music that you were playing for that stream was like taken down.
Oh no, yeah, I did I did that on my end because it like told me that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so his point is that we don't actually pay attention to where our commodities come from. Well, yeah, that's true. Apparently, nobody seems to care we're running out of diesel fuel. They'll find out real quick how important that is if we actually run out of diesel fuel.
I think people are paying attention to the fact that we're running out of diesel fuel. There's an entire legion of engineers working on a solution. It's just that the public doesn't know and the public doesn't care. Because as far as the public is concerned, if their steaks come in the plastic boxes with the wrap, that's good enough. The public doesn't care. They don't need to know how the sausage is made. As long as they get the sausage made, it's the job of the engineers and facilitators to make sure the sausage gets to them, right?
Right. And the problem is with our new ideology of craziness, people are so not paying attention to the fact that we actually need competent hierarchies and competent people in positions of necessary competence that where things are falling apart left and right. And it just astounds me how people who, I mean, you have to have been born and raised in the West and never visited any other country in a real sense to not recognize how quickly bad things can get. Like, I came here from Iran and I realize the world can actually come apart. And yeah, it bothers me very much how stupid people are.
Yeah, but I don't think it's just the West in this case. If we look at, like, say, a lot of developing countries, the difference in the West, people are actually more skeptical. In the West, we've sort of like deified skepticism as, hey, doubt everything that is. But like, really, like,
No. Okay, so this is the thing. People in the West think they're skeptical. They have no clue how skeptical gets. Because in Iran, everybody, and I mean not everybody, but pretty much everybody, thinks that the government in Iran is controlled by the British. I'm not even joking.
Wow.
Like, this is a common thing for Persians to believe, is that the Ayatollah Khamenei is actually an agent of the British.
How does
Where
that
did they
even
get
work?
that
He
from?
overthrew a British. He overthrew a British-backed dictator. How is that? How could he be an agent of the British overthrowing a British agent?
Because no matter who you overthrow, ultimately, they're all agents of the British.
It's British all the way down. It's like
Yes,
the turtle
it is
stacked up.
British all the way down. You are absolutely right. Karthik, where are you from? I mean, were you born in the United States?
Yeah, I'm born and raised an American. But my parents are from India. They've sort of told me about like the thing. They told me the situation in India, basically where the problem thing. The reason I'm saying the U.S. is a little bit more skeptical than like say India is that people in India buy the bullshit the politicians give them. The politicians feed it to them. They have shovels. They shovel the thing. We'll fix everything. The politicians promise us every single cycle. We'll fix everything, guys. We'll
Okay.
make the economy better. We'll
I see
give
that in
food,
both. I see that in America too.
Milan Vaishnav, you don't have to read his book, even though I did, When Crime Pays, but he helped me understand why Donald Trump became president of the United States in ways that I think few people understand. And Milan Vaishnav is a scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, and he did a study trying to find out why it is that people with serious criminal records, like I'm talking murder, rape, real convictions, tend to do pretty well in elections in India, right? And so the Indian Election Commission had a bright idea, which was to advertise the criminal records of politicians so people would know who has like a conviction for murder or rape or all this stuff. Guess what happened? The people with the serious convictions
Help them.
got more votes.
Whoa. That's
People want outsiders. That's exactly the thing. People in India want outsiders to fix their problems. They don't trust establishment. They don't trust.
same in
They don't
America.
trust they don't trust a squeaky clean guy. No one does. But then, okay, here's the problem with India, right? They have two parties in India, two big party blocks. Well,
BJP in Congress?
yeah. So my whole family are BJP guys, right? Of course they're BJP guys. Like there's only two real groups you can be in.
Hold on. Is your family Hindu?
Yeah, my whole family's Hindu. I'm an atheist. I'm the first person. I'm sort of like an apostate in their eyes. They're not really angry about it because Hinduism doesn't really do the whole "you're going to hell" thing. My dad's just vaguely disappointed. He thinks I left the correct path. But the way that my whole family is like they're BJP-ish, like they're like sort of like moderate BJP. So here's the problem, right? Is that Congress is horrifyingly corrupt. Like Americans, people who are either American or don't have any relatives like in other countries, cannot understand how corrupt the Congress is. The INC is a dynasty. Started off with Jawaharlal Nehru, right? The incompetent loser who literally lost his home state. He lost Kashmir. He's a Kashmiri. He lost half of Kashmir to the Pakistanis because he couldn't be bothered to negotiate properly. And then after him, his whole dynasty. Indira Gandhi, who triggered the so-called emergency, she sterilized a bunch of people. Her son did. And then she basically declared India to be a socialist state. And basically she did so much damage to the constitution, India still hasn't recovered from it.
Okay, I have to say, Mahatma Gandhi was a child molester, and that was one of the least of his sins.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi was. I'm not a fan of Gandhi. A lot of people are. I'm not. I'm all for. I think honestly, I'm more a fan of. Have you heard of Subhash Chandra Bose?
So
No.
He's like personal. He's like one of my personal heroes, right? He's an Indian freedom fighter who decided that he basically realized pretty early that peace isn't going to work. If you want to expel the British from India, you have to use violence. You have to ally with whoever you can. You have to raise the Indian people in arms against the British. So he went to the Japanese and the Germans in World War II and raised an army against the Indian government. He came all the way to Burma. The Japanese army with his Free Indian army marched up to the jungles of Burma and stopped there. But basically, one implication I've heard is that because Subhash Chandra Bose managed to make it that close with so much pressure on the British let go of India much earlier because they figured if we don't do something, we're gonna get more Boses. I mean, he was later assassinated. He was like his plane blew up in midair. His plane crashed midair, like it landed on the ground. Some people say that the British had to put a bomb on his plane. There's still belief in some parts of like his hometown that he's still alive
Right.
and in hiding, waiting to come back.
Okay,
Oh, wow.
so I mean, yes, obviously I think Gandhi has become completely mythicized, and one of the things that happened when I was an undergrad and I read the collected writings of Gandhi was I discovered what a disgusting human being he was,
Yeah.
which is why nobody actually reads his writings. Um,
Well, so
but the you know, okay, India has improved vastly since the 80s and since the fall of the Soviet Empire. But like people don't realize how much misery and death was caused by Gandhi's policies. Like I rate him
Pakistan.
right up there with Mao and Hitler and Stalin
I
and
wouldn't put him in.
Paul
I wouldn't
Pot.
put him in
no,
quite
I
that category.
would. I would. And I think it's irresponsible, and I don't mean like on our part. I'm talking about on the part of historians, and like there basically there are so many people who are like fascist or who are fascist adjacent who had ties to like the same ideology, yet it's like there's something that it seems like the only people who make the connections, as odd as it is, and this is actually the reason why I didn't learn about this until I was researching a paper or researching for a paper, and looking at academic sources, as opposed to just listening to documentaries or whatever. But basically, that shoot, where was I going? That the like really the synthesis of like anti or like of Jew hatred with like racial Darwinism or like the idea of eugenics really so it emerged in the 1880s with Wilhelm Marr, but that was it emerged into a milieu that was rife with esoteric fascism, and it just so happens that like I'm yeah, that Mahatma Gandhi, he was actually, I forget if he was atheist or agnostic, but he had no interest in Indian religion until when he was in, I forget if it was London or Johannesburg, but or one of the two. But he was studying in law school, and he ended up falling in with the Theosophical Society, who is
Those people.
yeah, and they influenced a lot of ideology that that like Hitler bought into, including stuff like the idea of geopolitics through like as espoused by Karl Haushofer, who actually mentored Hitler when he was in jail in Landsberg prison, along with Rudolf Hess, and basically like the whole Nazi movement is just a German offshoot of the Theosophical Society.
Okay, let me give you something that will probably shock you. I would be surprised if you knew this. So, do you know why Black people use the term folk so much?
No.
Oh, I think I saw you write this somewhere. So
Yeah, so W.E.B. Du Bois was in Germany, and he studied about Volkisch.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yes,
Proto-fascist
the
philosophy.
Volkisch. So basically, the supposed anti-racists in the United States, a lot of their ideology actually derives from German socialism, nationalist socialists, Nazis in Germany. And that's why they use the same folk language that like Volkswagen and other Hitler. So like it's almost scary how fascist the anti-fascists and anti-racists in the United States are. They are literally fascists.
And I think like this is Gandhi's greatest mistake, right? Okay, so the whole I'm still a little bit sore about the whole Pakistan thing. I'm an American, right? I'm technically speaking, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like it's not, the way I say it, I'm not Indian American. I'm just American. I don't hyphenate my identity. I'm American, American-born, American allegiance. I have one allegiance. That's the United States of America. It's Constitution.
Yes, but your name is Karthik Shripada, and when people see you, they see someone who is South Asian.
Yeah. And it's like at one point, like actually the Palestinian guy, this really pissed me off. Actually, more than he probably realized. At one point, I mentioned I'm an American, and he says, "No, you're not an American. You're an Indian," and that really pissed me off. Like, how dare you call me not an American? The guy advocating for a terrorist group, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. You're gonna say you're more American than me because you paid taxes longer. He actually said that shit. He said, "I don't tell me about being American. I've been paying taxes longer than you, dude. You advocate, you give aid and comfort to the enemies of America." My entire aim in life is to join the military and fight the enemies of America. We are not the same.
The thing that I don't
You are in fact a Scandinavian American, and anyone who sees you how Scandinavian American you are, and your name is Garth.
But what was it that I was going to say? Oh yeah,
So Pierrot, I don't know who you are.
he's another one of my friends. I met him through Dr. Long name, Dr. Was it? I mean, he goes by Dr. Alman Hillman, but it's like Dr. Charles Alman Hillman, but he goes by Dr.
Oh, did I say that correctly? Pierrot?
Am I on? Oh, is it working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, it's Pierrot. It's French, but I'm not French. I just wear a beret because I'm a douchebag. I'm just somebody on the internet, honestly.
Do you also go to ASU?
No.
No, so I met him through. Wait, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so we met through Dr. Alman Hillman. He's a scholar of ancient Greek, and he's also he's done some really, really good work on some of the possible origins of Christianity, and its origins from essentially a Gnostic Jewish cult.
Is he one of those mythicists?
I don't think so.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Because as much of a mythicist I kind of sort of am, because I don't believe Jesus was a single human being. I believe he has to be some sort of gestalt of several human beings. Believing that he wasn't, that there was no human being, it's like James, the brother of Jesus. James Tabor actually believes the James ossuary is an actual thing, and I don't know more about archaeology than James Tabor does.
Yeah, and here's the thing I was thinking about, actually the James brother of Jesus. Sort of a slight tangent, I guess. Does anyone else think it's kind of absurd, the entire perpetual Virgin Mary thing? Jesus has brothers. Where do brothers come from?
So I am actually reading the book James, the brother of Jesus, and I have to say it's a page turner. It is unfortunate that Robert Eisenman tried to write a scholarly book, even though it has had a scholarly impact. If he had written it as historical fiction, I've actually so I have this plot for a historical novel that I just need somebody who's good enough to write a historical detective novel to flesh it out. But you could totally make, because you have all of these scholars like James Tabor, like Father Stephen DeYoung, who's actually going to be on my channel this Friday, Bergsma, Tabor and Eisenman and all these people. They're trying to figure out what actually happened back then, and if you dial up the paranoia enough, which is easy to do, you could make a whole. So this is my idea, right? You have a detective who gets hired by this really rich guy to look into the death of Herschel Shanks. Do you guys know who Herschel Shanks is? Archaeologist. He recently died. Nothing at all questionable about his death, right? So he looks into it. He sees nothing questionable. He just died of natural causes, right? Gets next assignment to look into the death of John Strugnell. Now, I know you don't know who John Strugnell is. And John Strugnell is actually somebody who I think is kind of interesting in getting into this whole story of James, the brother of Jesus, because for many years he was the guy who was in charge of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then he went on an anti-Semitic rant and checked himself into a alcohol rehab, okay, and then died. And so the idea is that this really rich person who is hiring this detective to investigate this was actually in the mental hospital with Strugnell, and that's where he met him. And he's like a paranoid schizophrenic who thinks he's figured out like this whole thing, right? And he suddenly dies, and like weird things start happening to the investigator, and the investigator gets called to the will, right? The guy who's administering the will, and the lawyer says, I need you. So part of the will is he gave me this list of people that he believed were murdered, right? And he left $10,000 or $100,000, whatever you want to say, in order for you to investigate this list and see who murdered these people. And then the list includes Yitzhak Rabin and Muhammad and Michael Servetus and James, the brother of Jesus, and and so this guy, because he's an ethical investigator and he needs the money, he starts investigating these deaths, and you can use that to expose like all the various theories. And then if you're a good writer, you can actually come up with a good theory of what actually happened and expose it through this plot device. So who's going to write this book for me?
Oh, wow. I'm actually, so I was thinking about writing a book kind of using that same concept of, like historical or like kind of historical fiction, except in this case, taking place like in a speculative future, and basically using it as a plot device in order to educate people about the ideology of the Theosophical Society from a critical standpoint. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think that type of concept is really underutilized, like, in order to educate, because all too often people, like, if they want to educate about something, it's like, okay, we're just going to show something, and then kind of like it's very like in your face as opposed to kind of in the background. But I don't know.
Well, that's the problem, I think, with Eisenman's theories. Like, he spends thousands of pages trying to prove to you what he actually believes, but when it comes down to it, like, if he had written a Dan Brown Lego novel, far more people would actually believe what he thinks is the history, just like there's tons of people who actually like run with the Dan Brown idea that Jesus married Mary Magdalene or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like, so like I definitely don't have the necessary background, I don't think, to write a mystery of that kind. I'm not a very good. I'm a fledgling writer. I'm getting started at writing a fan fiction right now. That's like the name of fan fiction is to get sort of used to it, like to writing. But I have like a supernatural horror paranormal thriller series sort of in the works. So the basic premise is sort of like, it's called Western Gothic, and it says it's set in the West, like Western United States, and it's like about like various kinds of supernatural phenomenon and stuff, right? Like supernatural, like things like zombies, monsters, stuff like that. And it's sort of it's almost like an anthology, but like that is there's two main characters that sort of like weave the whole story together, like two major hidden characters. The first guy is named simply Theodore. He's a sort of like wandering con man who's collecting some kind of magical artifact. He's sort of scamming everyone at the same time, and he claims to be a killer of gods. The second character is called simply the Wanderer. He bears like an X-shaped mark, like almost like a brand on his forehead. He travels from place to place, and whenever he leaves the city, horrible things happen to people within a day of him leaving. So like the final reveals like Theodore is revealed a little earlier that Theodore Van Helsing, like the grandson of Abraham Van Helsing. He's like sort of like, and he's like a sort of wandering exorcist. He's like sort of like basically like, he seems like a con man, like a scumbag, and that's how the characters see him because it's sort of an unreliable narrator in aspects of it. It's like the characters see him as a scumbag, he's portrayed as a scumbag, but he's actually sort of like a knight errant on a mission. And the mission is to kill the other guy, the Wanderer, who's later revealed to literally be Cain, the son of Adam. Like the origin of the idea here being that after God cursed Cain, that's the mark on his forehead, the X-shaped mark at the top. That sort of premise story is that like after that, Cain sort of became like the father of monsters. Like his children bore the curse of like vampirism. After they died, they rose from the dead and drank blood in order to try to cleanse away the blood. Like as Cain shed the blood of Adam, so all of his sons after their death rise and shed the blood of man. And there's a whole thing I had going there, but
this is one of the oldest stories ever. What's your major?
I'm an electrical major.
Electrical engineering?
Yeah.
My recommendation, and it continues to be my recommendation to everybody, major in mathematics. That is the only undergraduate major worth majoring in by anyone ever.
There's not many jobs in there, is there? Like you have to get like a PhD to get like a lot of like the income.
No. Look up the job report for actuary. If you don't even have to get your bachelor's degree. If you pass an actuarial exam as a junior, you can get a job 6 figures like that.
Wait, really?
Yes. You just have to pass the test. But guess what? You have to pass the test. They don't care what your degree is in. They don't care what you do. You have to pass the test. Yeah. Actuaries are the highest earning people with a bachelor's degree at all. Yeah.
I'll mention my friend. One of my friends is going for a PhD in mathematics. I'll mention actuary to him. He's really, really smart. The guy's like, I'm convinced that he's an actual like bona fide genius. He has like, I don't know, he just has an amazing mind. He just puts things together. Like I've never seen anyone do it like him. But for some reason, he's convinced he wants to like be he wants to do like mathematics, like theoretical mathematician.
I mean, if he wants to be a theoretical mathematician and he's getting his PhD in mathematics from ASU, you can put him in contact with me, and I will try to put him in contact with Eric Weinstein, because Eric Weinstein really likes theoretical math people. Academia not going to pay you. Like finance will pay you.
Yeah.
And one of the big mistakes that people like Eric Weinstein made for way too long is not realizing, you know what? If you know a lot of math, start adding up the numbers in your bank account. That matters. And math is racist. Math is in fact racist. This is true.
I love that headline so much. I loved it. I looked at it. I was thinking, there's no way this is an actual headline. No one is that stupid. I would like to believe that the West hasn't degenerated quite that much as to deride math.
No. Okay. The School of Public Health, during a pandemic, the School of Public Health of Harvard tweeted out an article from Popular Mechanics of a PhD in math arguing 2 + 2 = 5.
Wait, seriously?
Yes.
The
the School of Public Health from Harvard during a pandemic tweeted out an article in Popular Mechanics of a PhD in math arguing 2 + 2 = 5. If you don't understand what that means as a political show of force, you need to go read 1984.
I've read that one. It's so good. It's descriptive.
And then you need to realize that the School of Public Health was actually making a political statement about the power of the wokerati over Popular Mechanics, which is one of the most important magazines in our society.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand what the mathematician was doing there, right? I understand that in this, he's demonstrating that in theory you can argue almost anything. There are very few, especially if you use enough caveats and loopholes, or if you could devise a mathematical space where 2 + 2 = 5. But the particular way that it's being published in that sense is suspicious. But I'm sure you could probably define a different set of numbers. You could define
No, so this is the point. Like James Lindsay, who, if you haven't been listening to, you should, actually goes through the fact that they're not even trying to, they are very deliberately, it is a show of force. It is saying, I can tell you anything. There's a reason why it was in Popular Mechanics. There's a reason why the School of Public Health was tweeting it out. There's a reason why it was during the pandemic. You have to understand that this was for the specific purpose of proving to people that the wokerati control our government.
They do. They've always have. That wasn't their entire strategy. Like, that's the thing. Is the only socialist one is, again, is a purge, not like a violent purge, but the government, when the next government comes into power, first thing they have to do.
They haven't always, but this is the long march through the institutions, I would say, is only 50 or 60 years old. And I don't think they had the control. Well, first of all, I have to say, I don't think they have full control. You have to understand that politics is very much like fluid mechanics. Okay? The thing with fluid mechanics is there's fluid and there's lots of forces trying to affect how that fluid flows. And the fact is, it's very, very hard to calculate how exactly various actors will create eddies and flow within that fluid. And that's what's going on. And so a lot of people try to simplify it, and they think they understand how someone controls that flow. And the fact is, there are way too many variables for any one person or even one group of people or even a coalition of people to truly control the flow of politics certainly in the United States, but all over the world. And that's the problem, is the fluid mechanics of politics and sociology is just too complex for most people's brains. And so we get a bunch of idiots who are too dumb to understand what's going on talking about it. And frankly, I think we need to start imposing IQ minimums for certain things. Oh, I know. Hey, let's require SAT scores for getting into colleges. How about that?
Isn't that already the case? Like, in every normal good college requires you to have taken SAT?
Let me show you a very interesting.
I mean, Harvard is like not a good college anymore. Like, Harvard is steadily degenerated, like, over time. It used to be good. Now it's just nonsense. It's just like sort of like it's like it's where like all the elite go and they sort of stew in their pretentiousness. Like, we're in Harvard. We're smarter than you. We should dictate your entire life because we have fancy degrees and things that don't mean anything. I have an economics degree. Let me tell you about how you have to eat bugs and not drive your car to save the planet while I jet around in my. It's insanity. Oh, I mean, UCs went down the pipeline years ago. This is already happening.
Also, in a bit, like after y'all finish with this topic, there's something I wanted to bring up, like what because you mentioned the people who think that Mary and Jesus might have been married, because there's some really interesting stuff even in the Talmud that might suggest that, like, for instance, the idea that she was a prostitute was not just slander by the church fathers, but might have actually been something that early Christians believed.
I mean, like, I've also heard a version where that says I've heard one version that says that there's two Marys. There's Mary the unnamed. There's like Mary the prostitute who washes Jesus' feet, and there's a separate Mary, Mary Magdalene, who is the one of Jesus' disciples. I think it's the Book of Judas. I think it is that mentions that Mary Magdalene had a special relationship with Jesus, that she was his favorite. That she was one of his favorite apostles, and that she kissed him often. And the word right after kiss is blank. There's like the hole in the papyrus there. And the question is, what's on that hole? We don't know because that hole's gone. But it could mean that they had a special relationship, that they were married. Jesus, of course, being a Jew, is not going to do anything like premarital. So if they're married, it would have survived.
Maybe not, because again, if he was a Gnostic, and this is very contentious for people who believe in Orthodox Christianity, but basically that he might have there was this whole movement like around that time where you had Jews essentially going off and almost like becoming like antinomial, rejecting a lot of stuff that people in Jerusalem and in the temple had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so part of what I have been discovering by digging into the Dead Sea Scrolls through reading James, the brother of Jesus, is that the Essenes or the Qumran community could and God loves me and I'm a dude. Wait, God is gay?
Man, woke Christianity is just the funniest thing. They took Christianity and lobotomized it. Like, seriously, that's the reason. I would be a Christian if I had faith. If I don't have faith, so I'm not a Christian. But if I was a Christian, I'd definitely be like Catholic or like Orthodox or something like that. Because like mainland Protestantism has lost the thread completely, irrevocably lost the thread. It's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, and as has mainline Judaism, as has a lot of things. But you should become a Noahide. But one thing that I have begun to understand about the Qumran community, and I still have not really decided whether or not I think that Jesus was a member of or a refugee from or related to the Qumran community, is they apparently thought that they were in a end time situation where they were in a war footing, and because of that war footing they were actually not getting married, which may be part of the reason that they completely were Jerusalem Talmud. Let me pull this up.
I mean, I've got to go. I'm sorry, guys. I have, again, engineering work. My classmates dropped the ball for several weeks. Like, they weren't doing anything. I was trying to kicked out of the group. So basically, the teacher just shot down my entire beautiful design as being overly complicated. So I've got like 2 weeks of work to make up. I've been taken off the design committee because like the teacher said, just do the programming for now. Stop overcomplicating things.
Sounds like a good thing for your teachers to say. And change your major to mathematics. But no, get back to work. You're a frosh at ASU in engineering. What are you doing having stupid conversations and chit chats? Like, how are you going to get married?
Well,
yes, this is far, far more important than stupid chit chats on the internet. Get a job, get married, and then we'll talk.
All right.
But wait,
Take care.
wait, Karthik. Just before you head out, I just
Yeah.
want to show you the one thing in that link that I sent real quick. It's just like one thing.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Is it okay, yeah. So so here it's talking about 3 cities that and what's interesting is how it describes Magdala.
That's
So-
Kabul. That's in Afghanistan, right? Wait, they knew about Afghanistan back then? Like there was connection between Afghanistan and like the ancient.
Well, it talks about Kabul.
There's also a Kabul in I think it's in Syria maybe.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was thinking because like that's really far away. There's like mountain ranges and stuff in the way between like Afghanistan and like Western Asia.
But yeah, so what's interesting, it says, Kabul was destroyed because of quarrel, Shaheen because of sorcery, and Magdala of the Dyers because of whoring.
It does in fact say that, yes.
And doesn't Magdalene literally mean of Magdala?
Yeah, and there's also another thing that
Oh.
Migdal also means tower, and there's this like basically Kaibali, or like the idea of like Magna Mater, that was like big in the Roman Empire, but also I think probably had some influence in the ancient Near East through being interpreted as Ashura maybe. But basically that she was she was viewed as having a turreted headdress, which might also be connected to the Tower of Babel. But the idea of a tower being connected to the idea of like this, essentially this, goddess that people worshipped, and it was viewed as idolatrous. And I don't know.
Do you know what this tells me?
But
Both of you need girlfriends.
But who needs a girlfriend when you can just analyze the Bible? I bought a giant leather-bound copy. This one right here was $8.95.
You know, for an
Killed it.
atheist, for an atheist, instead of buying a giant leather-bound copy, you might consider A, doing your homework, and B, finding a girlfriend.
The second one might be out of reach for now, but we'll see.
If you no. See, okay, this is one thing nobody's going to tell you except Uncle Jacob, and Uncle Jacob is going to tell you the most important thing. Do you know what girls find really, really sexy?
What?
Men who can provide for their household. What you need to do if you want to be a sexy man is get a job, buy a house, have a car, and provide a nest for your wife to come in. And I guarantee you, you will have the most important and best women actually want to marry you, because that is what women are evolutionarily predisposed towards finding sexy.
Yeah, I mean, like in my case, I'm probably not gonna like go for like I'm not gonna be planning on working in like the private sector. I'm going into the military. So I'm gonna become a career officer, probably the infantry or the U.S. I'm gonna go to the U.S.
Are
Marine.
you in the ROTC right now?
No, I couldn't. I'm not in the right shape right now. I have to shape up before I can get in. But
No, you can actually go to the ROTC and they will help you do PT. You should go talk to the ROTC people. I wish I talked to the ROTC people when I was in undergrad. I should have done the Air Force. I wanted to do the Air Force. I didn't do the Air Force. I should have done the Air Force. Go talk to the ROTC people. They love engineers. They love engineers from ASU, and the Air Force will definitely love engineers from ASU.
yeah, I mean, like,
And they will get you into shape.
yeah, like in my case, like I want to go into the infantry. Like I want to fight and destroy the enemies of my country. But
It's so funny. I have a Hindu friend of mine who his family was Hindu, and now he's back to being Hindu. But in college, like he got his bachelor's degree. He refused to actually go into the officer corps. He went into the Marines and became a gunner. just because he wanted to do the masculine macho thing. And then he went to one of the top law schools, and in fact, he's like this big lawyer now. And he went to while he was in law school, 9/11 happened, and he was called up, which pissed him off to no end because he had already finished his service, and like now he was a gunnery sergeant. He wasn't an officer, and it was like, oh shit, we're like looking at real war, and he was called to active duty. So back to my story, ROTC. Go talk to the ROTC. If you want to do Marine Corps, do Marine Corps. That's the hardcore, leatherneck type people. And I'm totally I'm totally for that stuff. But my job here is to tell you theologically, the most important thing you can do is get married.
All right.
What's the first commandment in that Bible you bought?
Let me see. It's in Genesis. I know that for sure. It's Moses. Where is it? No, that's not Genesis. Sorry, it's Exodus.
No.
Genesis 1, the first commandment.
Pru-uruvu.
Genesis 1.
Pru-uruvu. Is that Genesis 1 or 2?
It would have to be 2.
Yeah, I think it is in Genesis 2.
Genesis 2. Let's see. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas and let birds multiply on the earth.
You hear that, Karthik? Be fruitful and multiply.
All right. Well, I'll see what I can do about that.
Let me know.
Well, have a good night. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. 1 + 1 = 1. Therefore, a man shall leave his mother and father and become one flesh with his wife. Wait, that means 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 1 2. Great new Jacob. No, I'm sorry. That's not how it works. Also, Jacob, feel free to stop me if I infuse your chats with too much irony. Impossible. The shitposter in my consciousness Congress is quite large, not larger than mine. Okay, what are we talking about?
Well, so there's a few things I think are interesting. I was talking to who was I talking to? Wait. Oh, right. I was talking to Amon about this. And like he's a serious scholar. Like some of his mentors were like the people who translated the PGM. I forget the specific details, but like he's a serious scholar, and like he doesn't put up with like half-ass scholarship. But like basically there's some really fascinating stuff that you get just from looking into the New Testament, or rather the Greek Bible in Greek, because of the way that like when a lot of this stuff, like when the newer versions, or like especially after the Gutenberg press, when you have all these different versions that start getting printed out, and eventually you have like scholars in the 1800s like retranslating it or whatever. A lot of them were really prudish and like very religious, and so they ended up translating things a certain way or not translating certain things. Which I mean, I've even found examples like in the Sepharia, how it will not translate a specific word, even though like it changes the context completely. Not to say that it's like, or like for instance, one would be like charon af, which where it just says it basically just translates it as off, where it says anger instead of like fiery anger or like.
Okay, so you have to understand with charon af. So charon af literally means flaring of the nostrils. Af is a nostril, and charon is bothering, right? And so that became the idea of wrath, and both charon and af became like words meaning anger, but the actual term is flaring of the nostrils.
So with that, is that like the same idea as Orach HaPayim?
No, Erech Apayim means so. I mean, I guess yeah. So it is related. So there is a lot of face imagery, especially regarding God in Judaism, right? So the oldest you were talking about, what is it? Apotropic magic.
Apotropaic.
Apotropaic. So you know that the oldest fragment of the Tanakh we have is
Wait, isn't that from Shoftim? Or in what context do you mean?
I mean this context.
Oh.
Are the oldest surviving texts currently known from the Hebrew Bible, dated to 600 BCE. The text is from the book of Numbers in the Hebrew Bible and has been described as one of the most significant discoveries ever made for biblical studies. The two silver scrolls were uncovered in 1979 and were found to contain a variation of the priestly blessing found in Numbers 6:24 through 26. And the priestly blessing is, of course, Yisa Hashem, Yevarchecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And which has to do with God turning his face towards you, raising his face towards you, and the apotropaic nature of the amulets. Jeremy Smoke, I have no idea who this is, has argued that the combination of the terms guard and protect is typical of apotropaic amulets and finds parallels among Phoenician and Punic amulets from the Iron Age. He finds a reflection of the custom of making such apotropaic amulets in Psalm 12:7 through 9. The utterance of Hashem are pure utterances, silver refined in a furnace in the earth, purified 7 times. You, O Hashem, will guard them. You will protect him from this generation forever. On every side, the wicked prowl of vileness is exalted among humankind. But so these silver scrolls were in fact talking about God's face and countenance shining upon you.
Interesting. Would you say that the Nehushtan is also like apotropaic?
Okay, so you have to understand that I actually think that the Bible gives us these things, such as amulets, such as tefillin, such as in order to teach us towards an actual lesson, right? And so I do believe that that there was a lesson in the copper serpent that Moses was told to create, and the fact that it later became an idol, and the fact that Christians later saw a connection with Jesus, because I think all of these things are in fact telling us something, teaching us something for the future. And in fact, I mean, when I talk to Father Stephen, I was surprised. I started reading his book, Faith of Our Fathers. It's not Faith of Our Fathers, it's Faith of Religion of the Apostles. And I was really surprised by this silly, I would say, here, let me pull it up, chart he has in his in his book, and I was honestly surprised at how silly he could be to have a chart like this in his book. So let me make this bigger. Timeline of the emergence of Christianity from Second Temple Judaism. 515 BC to AD 70, Second Temple period. Circa 3 BC to AD 30, earthly life of Jesus Christ. AD 35, calling of St. Paul. AD 49, St. Paul writes the epistle to the Galatians, first New Testament text. AD 69, St. Mark writes his gospel, the first of the canonical gospels. AD 95, St. John writes the Apocalypse, the final testament, New Testament text. Circa AD 500, formation of rabbinic Judaism.
Oh, but see, Jacob,
And
here's what you're not taking into account. When when Jesus's followers called him, whatever
Rabbi.
Oh no! They called him Pharisee, didn't they? No, they called him Rabbi. You're right. So it's like, where's this term coming from?
I mean, this is the type of timeline I have seen on Twitter, and I have been telling. Okay, Roman, I will tell you what I have always said. The only time I ever tell someone that they should do something is when I'm speaking to myself. The only time I tell someone that they should do something is when I am speaking to myself. Because, as the Baal Shem Tov taught us, when you see someone else has some... Okay, so let me pull this up. And yes, I definitely should get married. I don't know if that's going to happen. But where is that? When you see your enemy as donkey. Do you remember which verse this is? Exodus 23:4. And let's go to the Hebrew. Ki tifga shor oivecha o chamoro to'e Hashem. No, this is not it. Where is it? Where is it? This isn't. Oh, was it the next verse? Did I? Yeah, this is it. Sorry. Okay.
I'll be right back. I'm just using a restroom.
No, you are not allowed to use the restroom. Okay.
Ha.
Ki tir'eh chamor sonacha rovetz tachat masa'o v'chadalta me'ezov lo azov ta'azov imo. So, the simple understanding of this verse is when you see the donkey of your enemy, the one who hates you, rovetz tachat masa'o, and it is crouching under its burden, v'chadalta, and you do not want to help, me'ezov lo, from helping him, azov ta'azov imo, you should actually help him. That's the simple understanding. The Baal Shem Tov explains, Ki tir'eh chamor son'acha. When you see materiality, it is your enemy. Rovetz tachat masa'o. It is crouching under its its weight of spirituality, v'chadalta, and you are lacking what is necessary. Me'ezovlo, in order to get away from it. Azov ta'azov imo. With him, you should get away from sonacha, from that which hates you, what is wrong, right? So what he's explaining is that when you see someone else doing something wrong, in fact, God is giving you a form of prophecy. He is telling you where spiritually you are lacking, and what you can do is by helping this other person become spiritually stronger, azov ta'azov imo, you will also leave this chadalta, this lacking within you, with him. And of course, the Baal Shem Tov taught Torah, and that is why I think it is so important for us to listen to the Baal Shem Tov and how he explains this verse so beautifully. Jacob, go get yourself a nice Jewish woman, but only if that woman is a doctor. Hey, maybe I should check out this whole marriage business. You should, but you're 19 years old. And guess what? Women marry men who can provide for them. And guess what? If you can provide for your wife at 19, you're a good man. But guess what? I'm guessing at 19, you are not exactly ready to provide for your wife. Guess what you should be doing? Getting ready to provide for your wife and children. This is number one in a 19-year-old man's most important thing. Start saving money. Start working. I'm a gamer. What a resume. Yeah, that doesn't work.
You got to start somewhere.
No. Being a gamer is not
No, I mean, like, you have to start building your resume somewhere.
Yes.
You can't say you don't have a resume and then that.
Yeah.
You keep saying that you'll never have a resume.
Yeah, and you're 19 years old. So get a job, start earning money, save for a house, save for a car, save for your children's college fund. If you are an LDS member, go on your mission like you're supposed to.
So, Jacob, you want to see something absolutely hilarious? It'll knock you out of your seat.
Knock me out of my seat? That's kind of hard to do.
Here, check this out.
I am not allowed on Twitter, but I will figure out a way of...
Here, I'll just copy the picture.
Some things I've heard in a negative 48 Telegram channel, which I generously transcribed. This is why I call this group a new age neo-Nazi cult. The claims Jerusalem is in the US. They changed the map, our maps on us. We aren't just the country that chose God. We're the country God chose. Sounds like LDS stuff to me. Like, doesn't like the LDS actually believe this?
Well, the difference is that these people actually believe that America is where the Bible happened.
Yeah, that's what the LDS believes. That Garden of Eden is in Independence, Missouri.
No, but I thought they still believed that, like, you know, Jerusalem is in Jerusalem and that, like...
Yeah, but they believe the Garden of Eden is in Missouri.
Yeah, but with this map, they're trying to claim that... Here, wait, they're trying to say that Israel is in Nevada, that Judah is basically Salt Lake City, that Philistia is Baja California, that Lebanon is Oregon, Phoenicia is California, Assyria
Okay,
is
this is from the official LDS website. We must remember that the whole earth was paradisiacal before the fall. The Garden of Eden was a center place. After the fall, there was no Garden of Eden or parasitical uh, status on earth. Yet, relative to the locale of the site of the Garden of Eden, the prophet Joseph Smith learned through a revelation that Jackson County was the location of a Zion to be and the New Jerusalem to come. The prophet first visited Jackson County, Missouri in the summer of 1831. The prophet, like, they actually believe Jackson County is going, like, that the ancient Garden of Eden was also located in Jackson County. This is like actual LDS belief. Native Americans are the lost tribe. Happy Native American month. Yeah. The prophet Zacharias makes the dankest memes of any person I know.
But yeah, back to what I mentioned before, though.
Mm.
Oh, right. So the thing that I'd mentioned to Amon that he thought was significant.
Who's Amon?
So Dr. Amon Hillman. I could send you some of his. He has a website, but basically his
Amon Hillman.
a lot of his work has been into like the origins of the Christian church, and specifically like one of the things he's been looking at is the possibility that the sex abuse scandal within the Catholic Church might have had something to do with like a Hellenistic tradition of pederasty that essentially got filtered through. And I mean, it sounds iffy, but like the more you look into it and like the sources, that it seems plausible, especially because even in Afghanistan, you have the phenomena of the Baji boys, which is like, it seems like, well, shouldn't this be against Islam? But the thing is that it's so ingrained in their culture as a result of the of Alexander's army.
Who is this? Is this Hillman guy the guy who was in Rolling Stone?
I'm not sure.
Magazine for no. I can't Google this guy.
Here, let me see.
The Chemical Muse?
Yeah, that's one of his books.
It's been taken off Amazon apparently.
Wait, what? Holy crap. That's new, I think. No, they did
Oh
that.
no, I found it. Okay.
But yeah, he's also excuse me. He also got so like he has a degree in Greek, but then he also got another degree in, I forget exactly what it was, but
From where? There's a lot of people on the internet who are like weird people. Earned an MS in bacteriology and MA and PhD from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Oh God. The epicenter of all evil and stupidity, University of Wisconsin-Madison. You know who else is from University of Wisconsin-Madison, right?
who?
Michael Heiser. You know who he is?
Yeah.
And the guys who do the Bible Project, which is another horrible. Yeah, Madison strikes again. Honestly, like the only thing to come out of Madison is John Dark Depths, and other than that, and of course, Sam's wife also went to Madison, Wisconsin. But other than those two people, everyone else from Madison, Wisconsin, like I am convinced the University of Wisconsin-Madison is the epicenter of all evil, because like everyone who says crazy things that should not be said has like a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I have no idea why.
I mean, I'll admit, yeah, some of the stuff he says is pretty wild. But the thing is that like it's not just out of nowhere. That's the thing.
I look. It's not like Michael Heiser says things which are completely out of nowhere. But and like the Bible Project guys, Protestants love them because if you are looking for confirmation bias from a Protestant standpoint, Madison must be the Mormon Gehenna. It may be because honestly, it's like, I'm sorry, like it's just I don't know why, like every scholar who should not be. And did you know that that's where critical race theory originated, is University of Wisconsin-Madison?
Did not know that.
That is the founding conference of University of Wisconsin of critical race theory was held in University of Wisconsin-Madison by a bunch of communists. They probably had some satanic orgy. And that's like it is the font of evil in the world. I don't know how it happened.
Let me see if I can.
Confirmation bias is a huge problem for Protestants. It's a huge problem for everyone. And they say Flint, Michigan has bad water. Honestly, I have no clue why Paul seems like Joseph Smith, to be honest. You mean Paul Ball of Tarsus? Yeah. Very, very similar. Very similar. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Where is this? Chrome tab. Here. I'm sharing the screen. Okay, so this is one of the examples. So this is where
you make it bigger. I can barely read it.
Yeah. So this is where Mary goes and anoints Jesus in Bethany, or Bethany. So they make was it? Therefore they made for him a supper there, and Martha was serving, and Lazarus was one of those reclining. And so here it uses that word anakemenon, was reclining with him.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Oh, I have to go here. Therefore, Mary, having taken a litra of fragrant oil of nard, does it have the word olabastrum here? Okay, no, it doesn't use the word olabastrum here, but in another part it does. But so she, having taken a litra of fragrant oil of nard, pure of great price, anointed the feet of Jesus. And so in and of this, like independent of anything else, I know this is a ridiculous claim to make, but you also have the use of feet as a veiled reference in the story of Ruth and Boaz.
Right. In Hebrew, the feet is a euphemism for genitals.
So, and then the next thing, so she anoints his, his feet.
Yeah.
And then wipes with her hair. With her hair.
Right.
She wipes, his feet.
Yes.
And then and now the house was filled with the fragrance of oil. But let's see. So yeah, that's a relevant part.
So the possibility that they had sex. I mean, that's it. I think John probably is a. I think the Johannine works are probably a later edited collection of Gnostic, Jewish Christian texts by Gentile Greek Christians. So that's my view of it.
So yeah, here's where I found it. So the context stays the same. So it doesn't use the word alabastron in that, but here in Matthew 26:7, let's see, Matthew 26:7. Okay. Let's see, interlinear. Where is the interlinear?
What are you trying to say before you try? Like, what are you trying to say?
Basically, that. So probably originally, whatever group Jesus was a part of or was leading, that it was a healing cult, and I don't use cult in a derogatory way, just
Right.
but that they were going around. I mean, it literally says it in the Greek Bible. They were going around anointing people in the Spirit of the Lord, but they weren't requiring people give them, the offering for the temple. They weren't requiring that people go to the temple. They were essentially, bringing the oil to people. And on top of all the rituals.
Okay, why is this important? Like, what are you trying to say?
Well, a few different things, but namely that, so the Shemen HaMishcha, one of the things it was said, anyone who anoints anyone in this, that's not supposed to, is to be cut off from their people. And that's what happened to Jesus. There's more than just that, but basically the oil, on top of having a role in the temple, it also was it had a side effect of, or not side effect, but it also was medicinal because of some of the compounds in that. And basically one of the ways that that medicines were applied in ancient times, given I'm not suggesting this was how it was used in the temple, this might also be one of the reasons why it was seen as more I don't know, but basically that one of the ways that especially before intravenous medication administration through IV lines was available, one of the fastest ways to cause a medicine to take effect was to administer it through the opposite end of not the mouth. And
right, mucous membranes, right?
Yeah, and so the thing is, in the Greek world, in the Hellenistic world especially, the idea of health or medicine and sexuality and drugs weren't even really things as we understand them today. And so basically within this context, that especially when you're dealing with mystery or healing cults, that there tends to be a bit of a blurring of the lines between basically when especially when you're dealing with
Ariel, you're beating around the bush. What are you trying to say?
So basically that, well, a few different things, but essentially that the Gnostic traditions that the Orthodox Church later went and persecuted, that might have originally been what Christianity started off as, at least some forms.
Okay, I mean, that's possible. The problem is, and this is just generally the problem of trying to figure out what happened 2,000 years ago, is we have so many data points, and we have a very large number of narratives which can explain the various data points, right? And it's like any sort of linear regression, right? You're trying to find a function that connects all the various data points as smoothly as you can, yet you need a function, and you always, I mean, this happens anytime you have more data. Well, you have some data, you don't have all the data, and you don't know how reliable your data is. So you end up actually removing some of the data points. Everybody does this. And so confirmation bias and patternicity play a large role in that. And so this is part of the reason I, for example, try to amplify the voices of people like Father Stephen DeYoung, in addition to Robert Eisenman, right? Because he actually takes a look at the data and he gives a defensible narrative, and there are multiple defensible narratives, right? Bergsma, for example, seems to be coming up with a Catholic narrative that is defensible. I think Eisenman makes a Jewish narrative that's defensible. I think James Tabor makes a Protestant argument, a narrative that is defensible. Until today, when I started reading Father Stephen DeYoung's book, from what I saw of Lord of Spirits, he was making a defensible argument. The problem is we have so many different narratives which are defensible, and if you're going to be an honest actor, you have to try to see all the various ones. And what we end up with, for example, the people who end up on Mythicist, and a lot of what's on the internet is they're not really that defensible when you have enough of a view of the various. So to tell me that it's possible that Jesus was actually part of a mystery healing cult, I don't think I could rule it out completely. I also don't think it's something you can prove, and the vast majority of people live their lives with a theological narrative that is offended by that idea. And so part of what makes a narrative compelling is that your theology resonates with it. And this is the whole relevance realization type thing that I keep on pointing to John Vervaeke for.
Yeah, like, just to clarify, I think you can make that argument without, going into the more like sensationalistic parts of it. But like, in essence, what you can look at it and see that so I mean, I don't know anything about Jesus going around spreading the Ketoret. I haven't seen any references to that. But like, literally in the Greek Bible, it says he was going around spreading the anointing oil. And for whatever reason, that's not brought up by like I've never really heard that brought up as a reason why Jesus was killed. Even because realistically, that would be one of the reasons why the temple would have.
I don't think so. I really don't think so, because look, the fact is, I have to ask you: is this you trying to find a narrative which works with your priorities of, hey, look, drugs are cool to experiment with?
That's not the argument I'm trying to make, because the whole point is that he because keep in mind that like it was used in a medical context, or well, not medical, but more like spiritual. But the thing is that like this is before you had like back when temples and hospitals were essentially the same thing, like
right.
So like I do think that it's important to say that, because like I'm not saying, oh yeah, let everyone do drugs, God created everything, therefore no, that's a stupid argument. But what I'm trying to say though is that it literally says, I forget exactly where this is. I think it's in Leviticus. I'm not 100% sure, but it says anyone who who makes known the recipe, or who anoints themselves with it, or makes a perfume like it, is to be cut off from their people. What that means is, up to interpretation, whether, the Sanhedrin would actually, because, there's a whole tradition of...
Well, karet, spiritual excision, was never an actual punishment. And during the time of Jesus, I mean, we have from the Gospels proof of it. The actual Sanhedrin the death penalty wasn't even being enforced.
Yeah.
And so at that time, the idea that someone who was going around creating a potion which may or may not have been the exact same thing as the Ketoret or the Shemen HaMishcha, or basically anything from the temple itself, that there was an enforcement mechanism under Greek/Roman rule. I mean, that just wasn't happening.
Yeah, and again, not to say because I don't think that like if you believe, and I don't think that you can take the Gospels as historical narrative, but like at the end of the day, just because the Sanhedrin wasn't executing people at that time, that's not to say that people who were in who were within the temple infrastructure, that they couldn't have lobbied the Roman government. Again, speculation, but the really, so I mean, you have the fact that he was, and whether or not it actually was the Ketoret or not, the fact is that he was basically telling people you don't need to go to the temple.
Honestly, I think it's pretty clear that Jesus was just like everybody else who was crucified, was being crucified for being rebellious of Roman rule.
Oh,
I mean,
well, yeah,
we
100%.
have lots and lots of actual things. So, like, the question becomes, why would supposedly the priesthood and the Sanhedrin go along with that? The idea that he was usurping their spiritual authority somehow by healing people, by using the medicines, and they would accuse him of being some sort of sorcerer. I mean, that's not implausible. It would be, I mean, yeah, you could make that argument that Jesus was going around healing people, and the religious authorities found that as a convenient excuse, or as a confirmation of why they should allow the Romans to execute him for being a messianic figure, the king of the Jews. I'm not sure that's a even controversial thing to say. Let me answer some questions here. Another question: when the Torah was translated from Hebrew to Greek, was it corrupted? Okay, you have to understand there are a lot of Christians who try to defend the Septuagint, and what the word Septuagint means is highly misunderstood for theological reasons. So let's explain what Septuagint is. Septuagint means 70, as in Targum Shivim, as in the translation from Hebrew to Greek of the 70, or actually 72. As the story goes, Ptolemy, who was the ruler of Egypt as a descendant of Alexander the Great, wanted a translation into Greek of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and he took 6 scholars from each of the tribes, therefore the 72, and he imprisoned each of them separately and had them translate the Bible to Greek so that they would not do any sort of shenanigans. And miraculously, this came out to be the Septuagint. Now, that is the supposed Septuagint. What happened was that there were, in fact, multiple Greek translations of the 5 books of Moses, which were referred to as the Septuagint. And when you look in the Talmud, and I believe even in the Mishnah, it refers to certain sections and versions of the Septuagint which does not match what we have today as the Septuagint of the 5 books of Moses, which was preserved by the Christians. That's the actual Septuagint. Now, when people talk about the Septuagint, they almost never talk about the 5 books of Moses, because nobody actually cares about the Greek translation of the 5 books of Moses, because the text of the 5 books of Moses is so obviously the Masoretic text, nobody, like, that's not even a thing to talk about or worry about. What people actually end up fighting over is the Septuagints, which is various Greek translations of the Hebrew Bible, which are the other parts of the Hebrew Bible, not the 5 books of Moses. What we refer to as the prophets and the writings, Nevi'im and Ketuvim, and actually includes what are called the deuterocanonical books, which are the parts of the Catholic Bible which were not adopted by Jews or Protestants, and we tend to not have, although now with the Dead Sea Scrolls we do have, I believe, some Hebrew original texts of these, but we certainly didn't have for a long time because Jews did not maintain these books except for, I believe, Jubilees, which we use as a historical document. Now, the question also you asked is, was the Greek corrupted? The Talmud very clearly says that the miracle was not that these 72 people translated the Hebrew into the Greek correctly, because why would that be miraculous? That's not something we would consider miraculous. What we consider miraculous is that all of them made slight changes in order to prevent the king from becoming angry at the Jews, and that these changes all corresponded with each other. Curiously enough, some of these actually talk about parts of the Bible that's not in the 5 books of Moses, but that's neither here nor there.
Well,
The fact is that the Septuagint itself was the 5 books of Moses. What actually ended up happening is there were many, many different Jews at various times who translated the Hebrew scriptures to Greek, and those were brought together into the Septuagints and started being called Septuagint, and Christians scribes who were really, really bad at their jobs and did not take them nearly as seriously as Jews did, not even for the New Testament, the Christian Bible, but certainly for the Old Testament, which most of them thought was garbage anyway, as Paul calls it, garbage. And so they did not do a very good job of preserving it. So when we talk about the Septuagint, has it been corrupted? Hell yes. There's no question about it. The Masoretic text is vastly superior, and anyone who actually cares at all about the text recognizes, and that's why basically every single translation starts with the Masoretic text. And if you look at the Christian critical text, which actual Christians, including Protestants and including Catholics and including the Eastern Orthodox, go after, it's the Biblica Hebraica Stuttgartensia, HBS, BHS, Biblica Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is the Leningrad Codex, and which is why online, when you look for the Hebrew, basically the only one you will find is the Westminster Leningrad Codex, which Westminster Seminary made an online version of the Leningrad Codex. All of this is to say, if you want to know the actual text of the Hebrew Bible, you have to go with the Masoretic text, because beyond any shadow of a doubt, it is the best possible critical text available, and everyone who seriously cares about the issue agrees with this. And so, yeah, looking towards the Septuagint is something you do for theological reasons, not for logical reasons.
So actually, speaking of the just real quick, kind of touching on this. Have you ever heard of the concept of the 7 books of Moses?
Yes. So Shiva Sifrei Torah. Actually the correct rabbinic divisions of the Torah is not 5 books of Moses; it's 7 books of Moses, because Bamidbar, I believe Numbers, is cut into 3. There is a small section called Vihi Ben Soa, which the Talmud says it has 2 upside down nuns demarcating it. And the Talmud says that when the Messiah comes, that section is going to move to its correct place and somehow is going to actually make the Torah more complete in some eternal way. And so the correct divisions. So that Vihi Ben Soa, that small section, is the smallest amount of scripture, which is Mitameh Yadayim, which is considered a full Sefer Torah, a full piece of scripture in halacha. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. Jacob, do you think the Pilate narrative is historical? I think at best the Pilate narrative is the samizdat idea, if you've heard of it, which is that the early Christians, in order to get away with texts which were clearly seditious, did the same thing that revolutionaries did in the Soviet Union, which is write things which were so obviously the opposite of the truth that anybody who read them realized they were in fact the opposite of the truth. So, for example, let's say you were living in North Korea and you are scared of Kim Jong-il is his name, actually getting a copy of what you were spreading around as samizdat, right? What you would do is, instead of writing, "This man is starving us to death," you would say, "King Jong-il is just such a great ruler that he creates all the bounty and keeps us fed, and we have no problems whatsoever with starvation." And like, anybody who's alive and living in North Korea looks at this and sees that it is a caricature and the opposite of the truth. Yet if they wanted to prosecute you for telling the truth, they would have to admit the truth. Therefore, they're put in a certain double bind. And this is the samizdat idea of telling the truth by telling the inversion of the truth. And if so, I think that is the closest thing that could possibly be considered a historical narrative of Pilate. And especially, like, by the time you get into the Gospel of John, it's just so ridiculous. When you look at the historical narrative, like even Josephus, like, Pilate obviously was not somebody who gave a damn about killing a Jew. Like, and so later Christians, not actually knowing the history at all, ended up seeing this obvious caricature as being truthful. I think that's the best excuse you could give for the descriptions of Pilate and the Romans, honestly. Like, I brought this up with the Gospel of Luke, where the Gospel? No, it's in Acts, where Peter is going to visit a centurion who is widely known for building a synagogue. And it's like, that is so laughable. It is so ridiculous and impossible. I mean, you can posit the idea that there was a centurion who secretly believed in Judaism and secretly was friendly towards Jesus and secretly was funding a synagogue. What you cannot posit is that a centurion was openly giving money to a synagogue and openly saying of a Jew, "Oh no, you don't need to come to my house because you are so great." So like what the story must have been is obviously Jesus was asked to heal this person in a centurion's house, and the centurion would, of course, not allow some Jewish filthy Jew into his house, and Jesus was able to heal him from afar. And in order to communicate this miracle, they give the opposite story, which is obviously like silly, like a centurion saying, no, you are too great to come to my house. It's like, obviously, the centurion was like, I am not allowing a filthy Jew into my house, right? And so that's the type of samizdat understanding of Acts, which is understandable. Robert Eisenman's theory is actually, no, the person who, Luke, who wrote Acts and the Gospel of Luke, was a perverse, like sadistic person who found a perverse pleasure in making fun of the stupidity of Christians by twisting stories into their opposites. I don't think you need to go that far. I think the samizdat idea is less crazy than how Robert Eisenman describes it. But what you cannot possibly believe is that some centurion was openly funding synagogues and singing the praises of rabbis he wouldn't let into his house, as opposed to publicly saying, I will not have a filthy Jew like Jesus in my house.
So, tell me if you think this might be like a similar thing, and and I might be misremembering this. This might just be like a something else, but like Jews in the Soviet Union, if they said like, you know, L'chaim Stalin, like they're basically saying like, may Stalin die.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's, yeah.
But anyway, the thing that I was talking about before about Magdala of the Dyers is that, you know, the context in which you had, you know, dyeing as an industry in, you know, Israel or in the Levant, it was almost, and that's the thing, we can't say that it was almost exclusively, or I mean, maybe it was almost exclusively, but we can't say that it was exclusively the dyeing of murex snails, which is, you know, how they were producing the, what was it they produced from that? Was that the techelet or the argamon?
Could be either, but lower your camera a bit so we can see your face.
Sorry. So basically, you have this reference to Magdala of the Dyers, that you also have this additional context that, you know, there's whoredom there, which I think even if Mary Magdalene wasn't a whore, that you do have this idea that people who come from Magdalene are guilty of whoredom, maybe just kind of like by association. It's kind of like, you know, a similar
Yeah, but you're getting so caught up in the details. I don't see why this level of detail matters.
Because you have an early Christian tradition of Mary Magdalene as a whore. But the thing is, the way it's understood today is in a negative context, but within these mystery traditions, like sexuality wasn't like, it was almost like, I'd argue it's almost in some ways kind of different, but still somewhat similar to like the Sabbatean heresy, how like you have this embrace of things that are like previously forbidden, or it's like I don't know. It's,
well, I mean, okay. I mean, you talk about Rahav, right? Rahab, Isha Zona, right? a whore, but zona also means one that provides, and this is a well-known thing in Jewish esoteric teachings, right? That an isha zona, in a sense, is provisioning, right? And that's what you see even in the book of Joshua, right? She provides a way for Israel to enter into the land, right? So, yeah, this isn't. I mean, this inversion, I would say, is probably what a lot of Christian mystics talk about anyway with Mary Magdalene and her relationship with Jesus. This isn't. I mean, like what you're saying may be surprising to some people, but it's not. It's not really that out there when you put it into the further context of a story of inversion, right? And like part of Christianity, the whole thing again, like what is Christus Victor, right? It's the inversion of death into life, of the cross into victory, like, right? So yeah, this isn't exactly, contradictory once you get into this concept of mysticism. But I have to say that this is the precise type of mysticism that I think is missing the point, because a lot of times what I talk about is people look at esoteric teachings without a basic foundation in the exoteric teachings, right? And the analogy I make often is when you learn arithmetic and then algebra and then calculus. When you learn calculus, you see the deeper truth of the algebra and the arithmetic. You don't find out that 2 + 2 really equals 5. What you discover is that 2 + 2 = 4 has a deeper resonance, which you can only understand once you move into the realm of variables versus constants. And you can't talk about the derivatives of numbers until you can talk about functions of numbers, and you can't talk about functions of numbers when you don't know your arithmetic. And a lot of times when people try to jump to the esotericism without understanding the arithmetic and the algebra, they in fact end up inverting things in ways that make no sense. Because if you're able to invert things, right? And this is why I often talk about the vessel, right? So there's a reason why it says, I believe the thing is Ein hamikra yotze mipshuto, right? That the verse can never escape from its pshat level, right? Why? Because the exoteric is the vessel in which the esoteric must fit. And if you don't have the vessel, you will not have a shape for the esoteric, and you will actually end up with all kinds of weird things which are yotze mipshuto, right? And it's actually quite dangerous. And this is why the esoteric, like it says, the sweetness is below her tongue, right? Tachat lashona, right? So the sweetness has to be underneath her tongue. First, you have to start with the Torah and the Chokhmah, right? And then you can expand it further down and outwards. But you can't do the inversion without having a foundation. And that's why some of my live streams, you will see that I will say things like, and let he who has ears hear and he who has eyes to see see, because it's very easy to say things on an esoteric level when that completely miss the exoteric, and without the cup you can have no shape for the liquid.
Yeah, I totally am behind you there, and I also didn't really get my point though. So the primary dyeing industry in the Levant was Murex nails for the dye that was produced from that. That's also one of the reasons why
The
Canaan.
chalazon,
What?
the chalazon for the techelet.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so one of the things was it would not only was it used there, it was also used as part of the Ketoret, which I still don't quite know why. Right?
That does not make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, the one of the ingredients in the Ketoret was opercalcium. Like, I forget exactly how to say it, but it's a part of the shell.
We have the Mishnah which we recite regarding Echad Esret Samamanim Hayuba. Let me pull that up from the liturgy.
Yeah, so it's known as Anika. But anyway, the part that's relevant though is that so you have three dyes that are being produced. You have the Techelet, the Argamon, and I forget what the red one was. But okay, yeah, let's see.
Okay. Pitoma Ketoret Ketzad, right? And it says Echad Samanim Hayuba, right? So there were 11 spices, and Tsori Vatziporin Vachelbana Valavona Mishkal Shivim Shmane Mor Kitsia Veshubolet Nerd Vacharkom Mishkal Shazar Mane Kosht Shnemasar Kalufa Shlosha Kinamon Tisha. So these are the 11. Which one is the claim that it would be
The second.
Foreign?
Yeah.
Supara. Eugenia Caryophyllata? Well, this is according to the Klein Dictionary.
Is that clove? Yeah, that's clove.
Yeah, cloves.
That would be interesting. I mean, that would certainly make a lot more sense. But if you type in Anika,
yeah. Yeah, so this is translating it as Anika. Sorry, Anika. Let's do Anika. Let's see what Anika is. Siporin.
So like which one it is, that's not for certain, but it. Oh yeah, shechelet. That's wait, the original word for this, which means to roar as a lion or peeling off. That's it. Where's shechelet used? Does it actually say? But anyway, so the relevant part though.
So the Septuagint translates it as Anika, meaning fingernail of claw.
So but yeah, the relevant part though is so Magdala being known as it's known as Magdala of the dyers. So Magdala is in the it's in the Galil. It's not. I mean, relatively okay, so relatively it's not that close, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty close. But to the actual seashore, so it's it's along the shores of the Kinneret, not of Yam Tichon. And so with that, you're not going to have those shells. And so separate from anything being used in the Ketoret, the shells were used for the dye. And so Magdala of the dyers, the implication is it had to be producing a different dye unless they were just importing it. But it's like, it makes no sense to import the shells to Magdala. Why not just, produce the dye right on the seashore? And so that's what leads me to think they were producing a different dye, which is entirely possible because you still have two other dyes that we're not 100% sure where they were made from, or at least, I mean, maybe it's written somewhere, but I don't know.
Okay, but ultimately, I have to ask, like, what's the tachlis? Okay, whether it was or it wasn't, what's the difference?
Well, so because so Shira Shirim Rabbah 112, it talks about the plants that they grew in Magdala.
Okay. Again, like what? So where are you going with this? What is this achieving for you?
Okay, so the thing is that the trees they grew at Magdala were Etshitim. And it says in the Talmud that, they were so holy that no one used them. But the other thing that's curious about that is that Etshitim, or acacia wood, it's commonly used to produce red dye.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I just wonder if maybe there's a connection between that and the I forget exactly what it's called in Hebrew, but like the red dye, not the argamon or the techelet, but the other one.
Okay.
The
shani.
Yeah. So the red one, because it's
As
entirely
in the wool.
Sorry, what?
For the wool thread, the crimson thread.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here, and I would say probably like the people at the Temple Institute, for example, which I have to say is funded by a bunch of Christian Zionists and Zionist extremists, but they are bothering with this stuff and I understand why, because they actually believe in restoring the third temple through human hands, which of course is complete heresy, but they're actually bothering with this stuff for a practical reason. I'm just not that interested. I don't see how this is in any way relevant. Like, what is it relevant to? Why are you bothering with this level of detail about a recipe that ultimately will only be clarified when Elijah reappears with the Messiah?
I think maybe that's part of the intrigue of it, is that we can't know for certain. But that also doesn't mean, I think there's a difference between saying this is what it was and this is what it could be. But
right, but what's the point? Like, why is this important?
Because for too long, people were ignoring the ethnobotany in the Bible because the people who were translating it didn't give a shit about plants.
Okay, I mean, I have to say, this goes down to something my father always said and I always agreed with. Like, if there are compounds which are in fact worthwhile, like, yeah, I understand the fact that our patent system does not really work well with unpatentable compounds. But ultimately, like, pharmaceutical companies and chemists, for non-religious reasons, are in fact investigating these molecules as best as possible. And if you want to become a chemical engineer and investigate these molecules, that makes a lot of sense to me. Trying to figure them out because honestly, like, if you're investigating the molecules from a chemical and a physiological medical standpoint, digging into the spiritual texts is it's a mismatch. It's you're trying to figure out that which is Chokhmat Hateva from Chokhmat Hanistar. And I think that type of action is ultimately both counterproductive and, I would actually say, forbidden.
Isn't that exactly what some of the rabbis did? Just like if that some of the stuff that they did today would be seen that way.
Look, so let's talk about the Baal Shem Tov, right? So the Baal Shem Tov would make compounds, and in certain senses, through seeing the spiritual truths in the world, he would capture how they are, how they engender themselves in the material world, right? And use that in a manner that is beneficial both spiritually and materially in this world. And there are rabbis, Rabbi Kaduri, for example, until he passed away, was famous for defending such practices, as many Hasidic rabbis still are, right? And that is a correct orientation of spirituality through someone who lives bekedusha uvtahara, right? Looking from the spiritual and engendering it into the material, right? In order to, in fact, create a hitpashut, right? A how do I translate this? How do you translate hitpashtut? Let's call it an overflowing, but really an engendering of the spiritual into that what it needs to be in the material. But that's a proper orientation of drawing down holiness into the physical through a tzaddik, right? The opposite of that is trying to take from the physical and deriving the spiritual out of the physical. And that inversion is itself what makes it asur and an incredibly bad idea.
Wait, so hold on, say that one more time.
Okay. So there's the spiritual worlds, right? And there are the physical worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are able to connect to Olamot Elyonim, right? So you connect yourself to the Kutso Shel Yud. So, right? You connect to the Kutso Shel Yud. You understand what I'm saying?
Wait, Kutso Shel what?
Yud.
Oh, the end of the Yud?
Yes. The right? So I have it here marked as Keter,
Mhm.
the Kotso Shel Yud, right?
Mhm.
So you connect to Keter, right? And you draw down from Keter all the way to He Tachton, and you bring Adnut into He Tachton. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but how isn't Keter like isn't Keter kind of like, or wait, no, never mind. I'm thinking of Ein Sof as being like beyond comprehension. Never mind.
And so the Kotso Shel Yud, in a sense, it is in fact beyond that. But so you take from the Kotso Shel Yud and you draw all the way down to the Hey Tachton, right? And you get the superimposition of Keter and Malchut. Once again, Kotso Shel Yud, you connect to the Kotso Shel Yud, and you bring it all the way down to the Hey Tachton, right?
Mhm.
And you bring Adnut into the Hey Tachton. You understand what I'm saying?
Wait, so Adnut is what, like?
Is
How-
God's lordliness,
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Um,
right?
mhm.
So you bring the Adnut all the way from the Kutso Shel Yud all the way into the Hey Tachton,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
that is the proper orientation of spirituality.
So basically, what you're saying is like you start in Torah and you, not from the world.
Right. You start from that which is the highest of spirituality, which is even beyond you, and you draw it down through the olamot, right? All the way down until you bring Adnut into Hey Tachton.
So
And that's what it means. May let your will be done, right? What is the will? The will is Ratzon Hashem, right? On earth as it is done in heaven.
yeah, so I mean, like I don't really see how that contradict, because I also have a like, it's really hard for me to really explain my thought process because like I got long COVID a year ago and it's like really just messed up my thought process. But like I have all, sorry, what?
That happens, yes.
But basically, like at the end of the day, I hadn't even thought about like any role that, for instance, Acacia played until I read this. It like basically I happened to look for references to Magdala in in the Talmud, and what shows up is this mention of Et Shittim, and like it's not just saying like, oh, it says acacia wood, so then I'm going to connect it there. It's also like looking at what it says, and I mean, I think that would also further
Okay,
connect.
Ariel, let me put this into a much more physical thing to you. Okay, do you put on tefillin in the morning?
Not every day.
Okay, so when you put on tefillin in the morning, what happens is you put a keter, you put a keter on your head, right? And then you say Shema, right? So you draw down from the keter into your da'at, Shema, and then you go about the rest of your day. First, you speak the Shema, then you go about the rest of your day having drawn from keter into your da'at, into the rest of your emotions and into the rest of your body, and you go about the rest of the day bringing all the adnut all the way down into the rest of the world and into the rest of your life. That's why, for example, you putting on tefillin is an important thing which draws spirituality down into you and out into the world. Okay? That's the proper orientation of symbolism, right? You take the Ratzon Hashem, you take God's will, and you make it a part of your actual physical life, right? And you affect the world in which you live by bringing that holiness down into your life and into your world. The opposite of that is you look in your life, right? You see physical things and you bring them as an esh zar, as a foreign fire to God from your own ratzon, because it is not properly oriented. So what is like the Our Father prayer, which Christians say, which is a very Jewish thing, right? Is let thy will be done on earth as it is done in heaven. It's you're taking what God wants and you're being mevatel yourself, you are nullifying yourself to God's will, and in fact you are embodying God into the world. The opposite of that is what Nadav and Avihu tried to do, which was a holy thing they were trying to do, but it destroyed them. Why? Because it's an esh zar, asher lo tziva havaya, which the Tetragrammaton had not commanded, right? And that's why being in the mitzvot, that is mutar, that is what frees, and the opposite of that is what is asur, which is bound, right? Is what is outside the will of God. So you have to have the proper orientation. And this is what it means when we say that the essence of Chabad is moach sholet al halev, right? The upper sfirot, Chabad, sholet al halev, right? The emotional attributes, the midot. And what happens when a human being is rightly standing up, right, is that Chabad sholet al halev, and it comes from Keter into your da'at, well, into your chokhmah and bina, and then through your da'at into your lev, your midot, and then ultimately into your yadayim v'raglayim, right? And that is in fact the hey tachton, right? And what comes from the Kutso Shel Yod comes all the way down in Malchut, and you get a superimposition of Keter and Malchut. And it becomes Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim. That is proper orientation.
And I feel like there's a misunderstanding because I'm not like saying anything that contradicts what it's saying. This is like for instance, the part that I've been trying to bring up is I'm
sorry, Richard. No, I cannot quickly do that in English.
Here's what I wanted to bring up. While Jacob, our patriarch, was lying, Meshev, in his bed, it was this, and it says like the divine spirit, is that referring to Shekhinah?
What are you talking about?
This is Shira Shirim Rabbah 112. Basically, it talks about how Yaakov how.
Okay, make it bigger so I can see it.
Okay.
And give me the Hebrew, please.
Okay. It's just a lot. So let's see. So this is at the very end. Okay. So let me just make sure it's from the right place. So it starts. Where does it say Abraham, our father? Abraham, our patriarch. Okay. All right.
Avraham Avinu bever Sheva. Shnei amar v'yita eshel bever Sheva. Amar Rabbi Levi Ketev v'havrich התיקון בתוך הקרשים הבריך 32 אמה היה, ומהיכן הייתה נמצאת בידם לשעה, מלמד שהיו מוצנעים עם הם מימות יעקב אבינו, הדהו דכתיב וכל איש אשר נמצא איתו עצי שיטים, אין כתב כאן, אלא אשר נמצא איתו מתחילה. אמר רבי לוי בר חייא במגדל דתביה, קצוצים והורידם עמם למצרים, ולא נמצא בהם kasher or kasher? Could you make that bigger? Keshar?
Kesher.
Kesher. Ufaka ayin deshitim hava b'migdal v'hava nohagim bahem be'isur mipnei kedushat ha'aron. Aton v'sha'alun l'rav Chanina Chavrin derabanan v'amar lon al tishanu miminhag avotechem. Yeah, he's saying the same thing.
Yeah, like I know it's saying, you know, don't use these, that it's forbidden. And I'm guessing the implication is wait until the Beit HaMikdash
No.
What?
It's not until. Okay, you have to understand. Shitin, Atzei Shitin, right? What does Rashi say? Ein Adam Chote Ela Shenichnas Bo Ruach Shtut. A person does not sin except that enters within him Ruach Shtut. Right?
and drunkenness.
Drunkenness. So folly is how it's usually translated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same letters as sota, right? So and it is in some manner related to Satan, right? So I mean, again, so he's saying v'hivrich. I mean, I don't know how to explain it more clearly than I have, but you have to, in fact, have the proper orientation, exactly as I have been trying to explain with these images. If you do it backwards, you are going to get not good things.
So basically, the only difference is putting on tefillin and then.
Well, you put on tefillin and you draw down from the tefillin into, right, the kutzah shel yud, from the keter, because that's what tefillin is. It's a keter, right? You draw down into chokhmah, bina, da'at, and then lev, right? And then into your arms, and that's why the tefillin shel yad is hidden, right? You cover the tefillin shel yad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately the yad is your weak hand, right? Yad kaheh, right? It is the weak hand. So you draw all the way down into the Hey Tachton. And that is the proper orientation, is to bring Keter all the way down into Malchut until you have Sofan Akutz Betichilatan, the Alpha and the Omega, right, converge.
So,
and ultimately, this goes back to what we were saying on your channel about the one and the many.
I guess basically what I'm saying is, like, is the only issue you're finding with what I'm doing that I'm not putting on tefillin and bringing down the.
It's the orientation. It's the orientation. What you're doing, I mean, the orientation is backwards.
Like in what way? I'm reading.
You have to start with the spiritual, draw from the spiritual down into the physical. You're starting with the material, and you're trying to take from the material and bring it up. And to some extent, that's a good thing. That's a korban, right? But it has to be ratzo v'shov. It has to start as, and malchut has to reflect, right? So you start from the male, the masculine, or duhra, right? The masculine upper waters, and you bring them down to the ground, and from that you grow up, and then you take the bikurim, you take the first fruits, and you're makriv them, and you bring them to the temple, and you bring them up to God, right? So there is a cycle there, but the bottom has to reflect, malchut has to reflect keter. You have to take from keter, bring down to malchut, and bring back up.
But
what you can't do is start with malchut and bring up to keter. That's you're gonna get all kinds of problems.
So then I'm confused because because Pardes is Peshat, Remez, Darosh, Sod. Like it gets more like it starts with the most basic and gets more more cryptic. Like am I wrong to assume that's
Pshat? Pshat is what is revealed. It's what's on top. Like your head tefillin is on top, and it's what you can see. It's Karen, right? It is the brightness, right? And the hand tefillin, right, is hidden. It is covered over. It is malchut. It is the feminine. So you have to start with the masculine, right, which is the external, and then you get into the feminine, which is the internal, which is the mystical, which is malchut, which is the reflection of the feminine, right? So the masculine engenders into the feminine, and the feminine then gestates and gives birth to the new life.
And I get all that. I guess my question is, what would be the peshat of this? Because from my understanding, like it's basically saying that like the peshat would be you have the what is this? Is referencing Shir HaShirim.
Well, what's the no? What's the pshat? So you always have to go back to the commandments. What's the actual commandment that we're talking about when we talk about the Atzei Shittim? Asuli Mikdash.
Yeah, to build a temple in the Aron HaKodesh, and that you're not supposed to,
V'shachanti betocham, right? So you build a house for God, right? And then God is shochen in it, right? So we can talk about the mitzvah of building a house, right? What do you do when you build a house for God, right? First, you actually go ahead and, in fact, build a house. You buy land and you build a house, and you bring your wife into it, and you put a mezuzah up, and you do all of the things that are necessary. But the Klei HaMikdash, right? The Klei HaMikdash come in at the end, right? You don't move your kelim in before you build the actual house, right? And that is in fact what we're doing, is we are building the house, right? So when we talk about the temple, we talk about the temple that is not built by hand. So the third temple is in fact going to be the building that is not built by hand. And we do that I mean, there's all manner of ways in which we do this, right? So there's a reason why, for example, we say the korbanot in our tefillot, right? And saying the korbanot in your tefillot, right? That's the correct way of going about doing this. But until the third house comes, you're not going to be able to create a ketoret, because the third Beit Hamikdash is something that cannot be built by hands. And partially that is because Kol Yaakov v'hayadayim Yedei Esav, right? So being a Jew, it's Kol Yaakov. So you have to, through Torah study and through prayer, build the house. And Yedayim Yedei Esav, and there's all kinds of things there to talk about, but ultimately we can't build the third house physically. We have to build it through prayer and Torah study and ma'aseh ha-mitzvot, according to the mitzvot which exist to us during the time of Galut. Yeah, and quickly lull. Okay, it is going to be midnight in 3 minutes. If you want to say something for the next 3 minutes, but I am going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight and then going to go to bed. I can't hear you. You muted yourself.
What's the or what's the pasuk where it's like talking about like was it Yamim HaAcharim, like, you know, the last days, and it's talking about like Bilam, and do you remember?
You mean in Parshat Balak, where he's talking about the I see it but not now?
Is this it? There's one part where it's talking about. Oh wait, I think it might be here. Is it? Okay, yeah. Oh no, it's the part where it's like a star will come out of Jacob.
Darach Kochav Miyakov.
Which one is that?
Darach Kochav Miyakov. Why can't I?
Oh, here, I think I found it. 24:17. Okay, yeah. So, wait.
Yes, 24:17. Ereno velo ya'ata, ashureno velo karov, darach kochav miyakov, v'kam shevet meIsrael, umachatz ha'atei Moav. Interesting. V'karkar kol bnei Shet. What exactly were you wondering about that?
Shoot. There's a part where it talks about no, what was it? Hermon. But so this is the thing that's interesting, because it references Hermon, Mount Hermon, as it references it as Sion, which I found like it's spelled differently. It's spelled with I think a shin or no, a sin, but I'm not sure if I can find it before.
Okay, and I don't actually know this, so I would have to look it up myself. Unless you're talking about 25:1.
Which one's
Numbers 25:1.
Let's see. Numbers 25. No, I don't think it's. Yeah, it's not here.
Okay, well, I am not going anywhere. We can continue this another time. Tuesday evening is my Hebrew Bible study. You can show up there if you like.
Oh, here, I found it.
Yes. Deuteronomy 4:48. Or asher al safat nachal Arnon va'al har Sion with a sin, hu Hermon. Ooh, I honestly don't know. I I simply don't know. I would I would I would say if you're looking for a more Kabbalistic understanding of it, I mean, you can look at the commentaries. If the Or HaChaim doesn't say anything, there's nothing I would know more than what the Or HaChaim says.
But yeah, like I think maybe with this, it's kind of like
Well,
you have
just look at the commentaries. Click on the entire verse. Yeah, and see if the Or HaChaim says anything.
But
If the
yeah.
Or HaChaim doesn't say anything, I don't know what I would be able to add to it. And I have to say, I mean, it's not like I am actually a student of the Kabbalah. I am not.
But yeah, I mean, so like at the end of the day, I'm interested in looking at things from
What is the what is that? Mitzvah besin שמאלית, ויש ההוכחה מהמסודות ויש שיר השירים שנמסר סימן מן זוגן חב זכין חד וחד שן אינמי חד בשן שמאלית וחד בשן ימינית ואחד מהם הר ציון בשן שמאלית וחסרן בשן ואנחנו בשן ימינית.
Oh, is it connecting the idea of like the two mountains?
I honestly don't know. But like if that's the Minchat Shai, that's more than I would like. This is way beyond me. Okay, I am going to end the broadcast. We will talk later. Good night, everybody.
Take care.